Hello, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for coming today to the International Bilateral Fund Call to webinar. I think we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes just to make sure we get as many people as we can, and then we'll get started at 10:03 or 10:04. Thanks very much.
Great. Okay, I think we've got 111 people on the call, so I think we'll get started. Hi, everybody. My name's Jessica Fell. I'm the Head of International Relations at the UK Space Agency. Thank you for joining the webinar this morning. It's great to see so many people on the call. We've also got Callie and Emma and Laura here from the team as well. So today we'll be focusing on the call for proposals for the International Bilateral Fund, and that was launched on the 21st of May. And we'll use the time really to provide you with some background information on the IBF, so what it is, how previous iterations have worked. We'll then outline the objectives of the fund and how they sit within wider UK Space Agency goals. And then we'll try to dive into a little bit of detail on how exactly you can apply for funding, maybe some important points to remember for your application too. And we'll make sure as well that there's plenty of time at the end for Q&A. But before we dive in, I'll just hand over to my colleague, Callie, to introduce herself and to go through a bit of housekeeping. Thanks.
Thank you, Jess, and thanks everyone for coming again today. Just bear with me. Yeah, so just a bit of housekeeping today. If we could all keep our mics muted, that would be great. As Jess has identified, there is a Q&A session at the end of today, so we'll be able to go through as many questions as possible, and we can ask questions in the comment section or in the Q&A function. These will be visible to everybody, so please do not include any sensitive information from your application if it is sensitive. And if you do have specific questions, if you think that they might be relevant to the wider meeting, then please feel free to ask them. But if they are specific to your project, it may be easier to email them through because we can give you sort of specific tailored advice. The team has received a lot of questions and we'll try and get through as much of these as possible today. But if we don't, then we will get back to you via email and all of the information in the email address will be available on this webinar. We will also publish the Q&A as part of the call documents. So the recording of today will be available for everyone. So we just want to go over a little bit of the history of the IBF. So the IBF was born out of a really strong sector request for UK organisations to be able to partner with international partners on opportunities outside of ESA, really to enhance the UK's international standing and really create and kickstart those international partnerships that can really sort of champion the UK on the global stage of the space sector and improve our bilateral relationships. So this is really to expand commercial opportunities with innovative space economies outside the sort of longer term, larger ESA missions and to promote the UK as that partner of choice. So there has been other international funding pots previously. Most of you will be aware of the International Partnership Programme, which was a hugely successful UK government ODA fund for sustainable development that the agency ran between 2016 and 2022 to really utilise that UK expertise in satellite technology to tackle development challenges. We've also got the Science and Exploration Bilateral Programme, which is still running, which sits within another area of the UK Space Agency. And the idea is to support mostly academia with space science and exploration missions, again, with other countries outside of ESA too. So the IBF really differs in terms of the breadth of scope that we fund. We really are looking to fund the best applications across lots of different subject areas and different areas across the space sector. So we are thematically agnostic, and we're willing to fund anything from, space technology development, Earth observation. But really, the main point is to sort of champion those international partnerships and get the most out of them. So we enable participation from both industry and government and academia. And during the last phase of the IBF, we saw some really strong applications and proposals from those wider consortiums made up of lots of different partners. So we are quite different from a lot of other international funds, because we do fund international partner costs where there is a strong argument to do so. Just to flag that international partner costs should be capped at sort of 30% of the total grant cost. So IBF Core 1, that began in 2023, and that was funded under 2 phases that was really welcomed by the space sector. So I think we got around 125 applications in 2023 for phase 1, small projects that would kickstart those international partnerships and allow for sort of scoping and feasibility studies for those partnerships to put in a proposal for bigger, longer term funding under phase 2. So the phase 1 projects, we funded 32 of up to, I think there are 75k each, roughly around 4-month projects for that networking and scoping. Those projects then went into a down selection phase, and they put in a proposal, and we funded 11 big projects in the end between in 2024, and they were 12 months each of up to 1.5 million pounds of funding. So that was a really successful call, and we wanted to open something similar. We have only got 1 year of funding, which is why we've only got projects of a 7-month duration for this year. We know that the sector is really asking for a longer term piece, and would like sort of more reliable longer term funding, but we are limited by what we can provide with a spending review this financial year. Any future funding opportunities from UKSA will be circulated later in the year when more is known from phase 2 of the spending review. So again, IBF Core 1, we had £20 million over 2 years. Most of that was spent on the larger implementation projects in 2024. Some of the projects that we funded, I think there are some project holders on the call, but we funded some really fantastic large consortium projects. So SSTL in the UK led an EO, an inland water quality monitoring system with Australian partners. We had the in-space Faraday Dragon rideshare with lots of different partners in Southeast Asia and fantastic capacity building. The University of Leicester funded 2 projects, CO2 monitoring with partners from Bahrain, and again, another project on radioisotopes for power generation with partners in the US. So just to flag again that the IBF is really very broad, and there's more information in the core guidance, but we do allow lots of different types of activities. So, the research and development of space technology apps and services, but also education and outreach activities, feasibility and knowledge exchange. And we do need to be realistic. We've only got sort of 7 months worth of funding for projects available this year. And I'll pass over to Jess now to talk more about the strategic goals of the IBF. But we hope to see some really great deliverables this year coming out of those projects, as well as hopefully kickstarting, international partnerships and building on existing relationships to promote the UK as that partner of choice. So Jess, do you want to come in on the core IBF objectives?
Oh, thanks, Callie. So there are 3 core objectives that we're looking to pursue through the IBF this year. So the first, being an international fund, is around our international partnerships. So we're looking to use the fund to build stronger relationships with our international partners and really to cement the UK as a trusted space partner of choice. The second is contributing to economic growth. So, of course, a key priority for the government. And we're looking to really do this by driving opportunities for inward investment and also exports. And then the third objective is around leveraging international partnerships to develop priority UK space capabilities. Because whilst we're really proud of our own space sector and its many strengths, we do recognise that international collaboration is really integral to the delivery of our future national space capabilities. So we've listed those capabilities here in the slide. You can find them in the core guidance as well, and more detail can be found in the UK Space Industrial Plan, but just to run through them, then those are space domain awareness, in-orbit servicing, assembly and manufacturing, space data for Earth applications, position, navigating and timing, and satellite communication technology. And while not listed here, I'd also flag launch as a capability area that the government has committed to developing further too. But perhaps to just zoom out a little bit further, the IBF is, of course, just one mechanism through which we deliver on wider UK Space Agency goals. So we thought it would be useful just to touch on those briefly. So the agency has a role in delivering the UK's national space strategy, and amongst other things, that strategy sets out the vision for the UK to become one of the most innovative and attractive space economies globally. And international collaboration, of course, features really heavily in that strategy and also in the UK's Space Industrial Plan too. And the UK Space Agency delivers on those strategies in three main ways. So first by catalysing investment, also by delivering missions and capabilities, both ourselves and with our partners too. And then thirdly, through championing space. So that's all around advocating for the sustainable use of space across different sectors and also inspiring people into STEM careers and education too. And as you can imagine, throughout all of our work, international partnerships really are kind of woven throughout it all. And we really recognise the opportunities that international partnerships provide for the UK sector across the board. So whether that's commercial, science related, or whether it's about building UK capabilities and resilience. But to dive into the details a little bit more of the call itself, so as Callie started to outline, the IBF call has been designed to support projects at different stages of readiness. So we really encourage applicants to think carefully about the type of funding that they're looking to secure. So under track 1, the agency will provide kickstart funding. So this is for projects at a very early stage of development. So while we do require projects to achieve concrete deliverables within the project timescales itself, this is also an opportunity to really build the partnership and to perhaps de-risk or to scope out a longer term project too. As Callie mentioned, our budgets and funding have been confirmed out to April 2026 as part of the first phase of the current spending review, and the second phase for future years will be completing kind of later this month. And so we can't guarantee opportunities to compete for future funding at this stage. So that means that we really encourage applications to outline how they would attract alternative funding for future years or for future phases if that's required. Then under track 2, track 2 is designed to support projects at a higher level of maturity. So this is where a partnership has perhaps already been established, but where a degree of further investment in the partnership is required to unlock that additional value. And as you can see on the slides, the length of grants offered under both tracks is up to 7 months, and you can see the grant values that will be available under both tracks and the corresponding TRL levels as well, where that's applicable to an application. So if we move on to assessment criteria, so of course it'll be really important to reflect carefully on the assessment criteria when building a proposal. And on this, I'd really encourage actually a close reading of the core guidance. So you can actually download the full core guidance from the website where the call has been published under the supporting information tab. And we've put quite a lot of detail into that, quite a lot of information on what exactly a strong application would look like. But perhaps to run through the criteria quickly, you'll see that the highest weighting has been assigned to delivering on 2 of the 3 strategic goals of the IBF. So those are the international partnerships work and the building UK capabilities work. You'll find that the third strategic goal on economic growth has been scored separately, so that's weighted at 20% itself, and proposals there should focus on areas that can make the biggest impact for the UK and for economic growth for the UK. So for example, that's perhaps focusing on markets or capabilities where UK entities are globally competitive, or perhaps it's an area of high potential for economic growth in the future. You'll see that the second assessment criteria is value for money. So all applications should outline how the grant funding will deliver on value for money for the UK taxpayer. So this is about outlining, why this specific grant funding is needed, or why public funding is the most effective mechanism for delivering this project, and also how the project costs have been calculated, how they've been verified, so how you're confident on the costs of the project. We also have a criteria around tracking the benefits from the project. So this is around ensuring that the proposal has a really clear description of how the benefits will be delivered, and a clear methodology as well for tracking and for recording those benefits. And then technical feasibility has been weighted at 20%. So that's if the project relates to technology development, then responses should, of course, demonstrate the feasibility of that. So you might want to refer, for example, to the research methodology that you're relying upon, or perhaps work undertaken at an earlier stage of technology development and plans for future stages. And then the final 10% is assigned to project management. So this is all around ensuring that you have the right team in place with the right skills to deliver on the project, and that the milestones and the finances are all mapped out and outlined really clearly. And we're looking as well to see that risks and mitigations have been actively identified, and how they'll be actively managed throughout the project cycle as well. And we'll need to see here how projects will be managed in line with the public sector equality duty. So we'll be looking to ensure that to see that participating organisations have the equality, diversity and inclusion policies in place. And then finally, we wanted to flag that we particularly encourage applications to support partnerships from those countries that are listed in the slide. So that's Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Japan and the USA. And these are countries that have been identified as important for advancing on UK objectives. But we do absolutely also welcome applications for partnerships with other countries, and we have funded a variety of partnerships during previous iterations of the IBF, and that can include emerging space nations, of course, where there are good opportunities to support IBF objectives. And really the strong applications, the strongest applications will outline how the partnership supports both the UK and the partners and the partner countries' space sector priorities. And we may actually share applications with international space agencies for them to comment on them and to provide feedback on how the applications align to their own priorities and our joint priorities. So I'll pass back over to Callie now, I think, to cover some important deadlines and information on the applications itself before we open up for Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you, Jess. Great. So on to the important information. So the key dates really is the deadline of the 7th of July at midnight for applications. As I indicated earlier, we really can't accept any extensions or delays to that date. And we will be rejecting applications that that may be sort of incorrect or incomplete, or that haven't been submitted by that exact deadline. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resource for any back and forth with the community, so we do need to be really strict about that. So after the 7th of July, we will be assessing all of the applications to come up with a final list of funding, which we will review. We are expecting decisions to be communicated after around the 25th of August. And we do want projects to start in early September. And we do appreciate this is a really tight turnaround. As discussed earlier, if we had longer timelines for spending our budget beyond this financial year, we would do that, but we can't. And we really wanted to give projects the most amount of time really to put in a good application. We've really tightened the timeline internally to review those applications. So if people could get spending and start going as soon as they can in September, that would be great. All funding and projects need to be absolutely complete by the 31st of March 2026. In terms of the application checklist, one of the biggest issues that we've got for this call is that we are limiting applications to 2 per lead organisation. So you can be partners on more applications, but for the most part, each organisation can only submit 2. And that's really important for our demand management internally here at the UK Space Agency. We do need to make sure that all the information has been submitted. So by the deadline of midnight on the 7th of July, please make sure and have your own internal checklist to make sure all of the required information has been submitted and that it's correct and that you've got all the extra templates. Please do feel free to reach out to us on our email addresses to go through the applications and make sure that everything's in place and that it's correct. Also, there is obviously a really tight turnaround between projects finding out that they were successful and starting. So in the core guidance that Jess has indicated already, please do look through that or the expectations that will be required of project holders if they are successful for this financial year. So it's looking through all of the reporting requirements, the project management, and what you're expected to send through to the space agency and expectations for project management. In terms of the terms and conditions in the grant funding agreement, please do go through those and make sure that you are happy to accept them, essentially, because we don't have the time for sort of back and forth on that after people have been notified of their success. We've already had quite a few questions around subsidy control compliance. Do please send through the questions. Again, there is a lot of onus on application teams to make sure that they are in line with the expectations there. Laura, are you able to talk to that briefly? I'm not sure if you can.
Yep, absolutely. So just to confirm, for this specific call, Subsidy Control Act 2022 does apply, and that means you're advised to read the call guidance quite carefully, as Subsidy Control Act compliance is the responsibility of the applicant. What this means for you, essentially, is you need to ensure that you are submitting an application that contains the appropriate amount of match funding for each partner on your project. For this call specifically, the amount of match funding required will vary by the size of the organisation. So please do read the call guidance. If you are a small organisation, you are not required to provide as much match funding as if you are a large organisation. And just to be really clear, it's determined for each individual organisation. So the lead organisation might be a large organisation with 50% match funding required. Your partner might be a small organisation with 30% match funding required. It is not the case that everyone has to contribute the same amount of match funding as the lead applicant. It is an individual subsidy by subsidy basis. So if you've got specific questions about that, I'd advise you to email them through via clarification.
Thank you, Laura. That's really helpful. And many of you will recognise Laura, who carried the IBF on her shoulders prior to joining commercial. So it's fantastic to have her around. Okay, yeah, so that's subsidy control compliance. And just to flag again that the application does need to be led by a UK organisation, and it can include UK partners and international partners across a consortium of academia or industry. But the lead UK organisation will be responsible for managing their partners, their budgets and their collaboration agreements, and making sure any relevant terms and conditions do flow down. So please make sure that you are aware of that and you can adhere to that if you are funded. You will need to submit a partner assurance statement and work through monitoring metrics and other reporting requirements from September onwards. The funding summary, as Jess has already pointed out, is up to 5.5 million available in total. We are expecting to fund between 15 and 30 projects, depending on what's fundable and the level of funding being requested. Funding will come through via those 2 tracks. Again, just a reminder that the submission deadline is midnight on the 7th of July. We will coordinate assessment and final decisions will be communicated. We hope projects will need to kick off in September if you are successful. I think that was all of the important information that I wanted to raise today. But please do make sure that you look through the core guidance really carefully. There are quite specific requirements, such as no more than 30% of the total grant value can be spent on travel and subsistence, for example, all of which needs to be really clearly justified under the value for money criterion. No more than 50% of the overall funding should be distributed to contractors. And a minimum of 20% of the grant funding must be claimed by the lead UK organisation. So once again, just read through very carefully and make sure that you understand all the requirements. I think that's all the information that we wanted to give out today.